Twins are dying, then they catch each other's hands and the impossible happened. You'll make it, brother. Incredible moment. A newborn baby holds the hand of his twin sibling as he prepares to receive life-saving therapy. Indy and Jackson Takis Marriott were born within minutes of each other, and they have a similar name. However, shortly after birth, it was discovered that Indy had a chest infection and required a drip. As a result, Jackson stretched out and wrapped his hand around the hand of his brother. They were spotted on camera by their mother, Francesca, who documented the wonderful event. They're only a few hours old, but they already clasped their hands together and entwined their small fingers. This is the exact moment that infant Jackson reached out to comfort his twin brother, who was in need of rapid medical attention to save his life at the time. Francesca Takis, 32, and her partner Erin Marriott, also 32, a delivery driver, took the picture of brotherly love just 24 hours after the boys were born. Baby Indy, who was 9 minutes younger than the other child, had been diagnosed with a chest illness and required an IV antibiotic drip. According to Miss Takis, everyone was shocked at how quickly the boys formed a bond with each other so soon after birth. It didn't take long for word to travel, and we soon had physicians and nurses arriving to view them in their crib. It was an extremely emotional experience. The infants were born on June 25th, when they were 38 weeks gestation. Jackson weighed 6 pounds, 1 ounce, while his brother Indy weighed 7 pounds. Jackson was the oldest by 9 minutes. Their mother, on the other hand, claims that Indy was not breathing when he was delivered. Moreover, it only took 3 midwives 20 seconds to revive him from his coma. It was only a matter of seconds, yet it felt like an eternity. Doctors discovered Indy had a chest infection 6 hours later, just as the couple was celebrating their births with friends and family. It was the moment that every parent dreads when they are informed that their child is sick, Ms. Takis added. They remain close even after being allowed to return home by doctors, with Indy clutching onto Jackson's finger when he's not looking. The twins are sleeping soundly as they hold hands with each other. Their mother, Francesca, claims that the two are inseparable from one another. While we were aware that antibiotics were almost certainly going to cure it, the prospect of Indy being put on a drip in his hand filled us with dread. It was at this point, as the nurse was discussing the treatment, that she was taken aback and gasped in surprise. Jackson had just crossed the street to talk to Indy when she noticed him. After that, Indy extended his hand and Jackson clinched it. I got the impression Jackson was promising Indy that everything will be fine and they shouldn't worry. It was a particularly sad and emotionally charged time. Indy made a full recovery from his chest illness, and his parents were able to return their 2 young sons to their home near Queen Alexandra Hospital in Portsmouth 4 days after they were admitted. Even now, they remain inseparable, said Ms. Takis, who works as a hairdresser. After they arrived at our house, we made the decision to try to keep them together as much as possible. They absolutely like cuddling up together when they fall asleep, and Indy is frequently found nestled up against Jackson. With Indy looking up to Jackson, he's already established himself as the big protective brother. It was normal for the couple to conceive their non-identical twins, who would become their first offspring. The arrival of her twin sons, who are now 7 weeks old, was a surprise for Ms. Takis, who said, even though there's a history of multiple births on my grandmother's side of the family, it was nevertheless a surprise to learn we were expecting twins. Having twins is a wonderful experience, and it'll be a joy to watch them grow up together, said the mother in another bittersweet story. Remarkable moment. Twins hold hands with his baby sibling in an incubator as doctors battle to save him from multiple brain bleeds. While being treated for several brain bleeds, a newborn boy was comforted by his twin brother, who held his hand in the incubator, where he was being born. Nursing staff had to send Cooper into the newborn unit because he had low glucose levels. Cooper and his brother, Lucas Keane, were only a few hours old when Cooper was moved into the neonatal ward. Carrie, 36, a Cluckman in Scotland, gave birth to her twins through emergency section, and was terrified when her son suffered seizures as his oxygen levels dropped overnight. Cooper was in the hospital for 5 weeks as doctors tried in vain to figure out what was wrong with him. We couldn't figure out what was wrong, Carrie explained. We had had many brain bleeds, according to what we were told. We didn't know what to make of it. It was a terrible experience for us. They were baffled as to what was wrong with Cooper or what had caused the bleed in his brain. One possibility was that he may have suffered a stroke while still in the womb, a placental issue they believe may have resulted in Cooper not receiving enough nourishment, he says. Well, Cooper was in intensive care at York Hill Children's Hospital in Glasgow. Cooper's twin, Lucas, was admitted to a hospital in Larbert, about 25 miles away. Cooper's twin, Lucas, was also in intensive care at York Hill Children's Hospital in Glasgow. In Carrie's words, babies are meant to lose 10% of their weight after 1 week, but unfortunately Lucas had lost almost 13%. The issue arose because I was attempting to breastfeed and pump for Cooper at the same time. Although I thought he was getting enough, I was mistaken. Carrie had to travel between Larvie and Glasgow for almost 5 days in order to see both of their twins. When Lucas had recovered, he and Carrie went to Cooper to see how things were going. They used to put a little cot next to Cooper's incubator and they put blankets on him for him to lie on, she said. Finally, I believed it to be insignificant in the past. He would put Lucas in the incubator with Cooper and they would both hold hands. We have pictures of the complete family in front of the incubator. Cooper was permitted to return home when he was 5 weeks old, according to Carrie. We never dreamed that they would be separated. It was wonderful having them both at home. I remember being overjoyed to have them there. It was terrifying since we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. Cooper underwent brain surgery in 2013 to have a shunt installed to drain the fluid from his brain. Cooper's head was 60 cm in circumference, according to Carrie. Before they performed the surgery, the twins are now inseparable from one another. They're fantastic together. Lucas is such a lad, but when it comes to Cooper, he's really good, Carrie said. Cooper was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid in the brain, in November of that same year. It had been brought up while he was in the newborn unit, and they were talking about shunts, Carrie explained. My spouse and I were completely unaware of what a shunt was. They were taking measurements of his head circumference. It continued to grow, and I believe it reached around 60 cm because it was becoming visibly larger. They decided to refer us to the hospital. I recall that the surgeon was a little taken aback. Cooper uses a walker at home to assist him in encouraging his legs to bear the weight more effectively. Along with that, he's being fitted for an electric wheelchair, which Carrie believes will allow him to utilize the device while it's cool. Cooper's shunt stopped working 10 months after it was installed, and he had to be rushed back to the hospital for treatment. His eyes were rolling around in his head, and he was on the verge of going into a coma, Carrie explained in his introduction. He said something to the effect of "You won't see this very frequently." Cooper was placed with a shunt, which is a narrow tube that allows excess fluid to be drained away. In the words of Carrie, we noticed a difference right away. Once Cooper got out of surgery, his right side is significantly weaker than his left, and his hand was typically tight. The right hand of the person I was talking to was considerably more open. His fingers were trying to cling onto the bottle when I handed him the bottle. Cooper was rushed back to the hospital after his shunt stopped working. 10 months after it was installed, the couple's daughter, Carrie explained. He started feeling sick, and we became concerned. 3 or 4 days later, his eyes were whirling about in his brain, and he was on the verge of collapsing into unconsciousness. His new shunt has transformed him into an entirely different child. The following day after his operation, he was giggling uncontrollably despite the fact that Cooper is unable to walk. The twins are inseparable, Carrie said. They are fantastic together. Lucas is such a guy, but Cooper is incredibly good when it comes to acting. He really understands Cooper's situation and is willing to go the extra mile to assist him. What is hydrocephalus and how does it manifest itself? Hydrocephalus is a condition in which the brain becomes swollen due to an excess of fluid. Sickness, headaches and impaired vision are some of the symptoms experienced by those who are affected. If left untreated, the condition has the potential to be lethal. A shunt, which is a tiny tube, can be used to remove fluid from the brain after it's been implanted. Hydrocephalus was previously referred to as water on the brain. Cooper is a fun-loving guy who also has a serious side. According to Carrie, Cooper's right side of his body is weaker as a result of a brain bleed that occurred during his birth. When Lucas was about a week old, he lost an excessive amount of weight and had to be admitted to the Larvie General Hospital. Cooper was transported to York Hill Children's Hospital in Glasgow, which was 25 miles distant at the time. Cooper is now doing well. Cooper is a lot of fun, but he still has a serious side to him, and Lucas is so noisy. He's your average lad, says the director. Cooper thinks it's amusing when he's being mischievous. Cooper and his twin are now 3 years old and attend the same nursery. Carrie says Cooper is already aware that he's different from the other children. He enjoys seeing what other children are doing, but you can see him becoming irritated, she explained further. I'm sure he's looking at me and wondering, why can't I do that? He says.